War is immoral. Poverty is immoral. Racism is immoral. Police brutality is immoral. Oppression is immoral. Genocide is immoral. Imperialism is immoral. This country represents all those things. All those things. All those things. All those things.
If you're on social media, you likely know my guest this week on Global Warning. Her posts go viral because they put news and politics in perspective, the human perspective, which makes her a fitting guest for a show designed to connect global and local, macro to micro. But Melanie Dorigo is way more than an online figure. She ran a grassroots campaign for Congress in New York with no corporate money, and though she didn't win, she made waves. Her goal, well before Project 2025, to counteract the far-right agenda and fight for families in her community. Now Executive Director of Campaign for New York Health and recent VP of Legislation for the National Organization for Women New York State, the mother of three has organized marches, rallies, and protests on everything from supporting local left politicians to protecting Planned Parenthood. Born into an impoverished family on the South Shore of Long Island and raised by her grandmother in Lindenhurst, Melanie was the first in her family to attend college, working numerous jobs while attending Barnard. Melanie then earned her master's in science and has worked as a healthcare advocate and strategist ever since, teaching us how to live more healthfully, prevent unnecessary illness, and save much needed money in the process. As a mother, Melanie also knows what it's like to battle the system directly, something I can relate to. In her case, Melanie was passed over for a job after the employer saw she was pregnant and expecting. And when her son Ryan was born and her husband was laid off, Melanie was put on a payment plan, owing the hospital thousands of dollars for having a baby. On episode 9 of Global Warning, I'll be talking with Melanie Dorigo about fighting back against injustices in the healthcare system and workplace, personally, professionally, and politically, the importance of science and health, particularly under a Trump administration, running for Congress as a leftist Democrat, and how social media, in spite of all its drawbacks, can serve as an optimal vehicle for organizing in the 21st century. Melanie, thank you so much for coming on. So glad to have you. Everyone, if you're watching, be sure to like, comment, and share. Follow Melanie Dorigo everywhere you can find her. Subscribe, and for exclusive extras, become an official member. Let's start at the beginning. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
I'm so glad. It's great to have you too. We've known each other for so long, and it's our first time doing something in tandem for the world. So tell me about your upbringing and how it led to where you are today.
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned, I grew up on the South Shore of Long Island in I wouldn't even call it a working class household. We were quite impoverished. For me, I think it was very normal to go without. And while that might sound a bit like a sob story, I think there are a lot of positives that come from growing up the way I did, right? You become very scrappy. You become very innovative. You learn how to make things work in a world that just doesn't work, right? And I think while it was really hard, and I wouldn't downplay that, and I certainly wouldn't wish the childhood I had on anyone, I do think what came out of it, has really helped me forge the path that I've forged today. It's interesting because some folks that I went to high school with, they have a podcast, and they recently just asked me to come on, and we're scheduling. But one of the questions that they often ask is, how did your upbringing in Lindenhurst affect you, right? And I guess we were pretty impoverished even for Lindenhurst, but it is a primarily working class community. And sadly today it's a very red leaning community. But one thing that I don't know why, maybe it's in the water, right? It's the way we communicate. Folks in that town, they're tough. I mean, they breed them as tough as they come. And I think that really helps when you're an underdog, right? Because you're kind of always an underdog growing up in a community like that. And it hardens you, and it makes you just not care when you have to go up against power and challenge power, because you know the only way to get ahead, the only way to move forward is to challenge something, right? And so in my case, the path that I have forged, challenging entrenched power, running for office, fighting for policy against very powerful forces, right? I think it all comes from the way I was raised, right? And how I grew up. So is sort of the therapy bills, right?
Well, it's clear therapy has worked then, because it sounds like you figured it out, and it doesn't surprise me. And I guess I'm a little biased also just about New York in general, being that's my home too. I think we're all tough, but I do think you're right about how what you go through builds who you are today. And in the opposite case, like you take a Trump or his kids, if you don't go through much, you end up to be more fickle, or I don't know. There's a million different words we can use, but not able to withstand the same type of pressures that, you have running for office, and even in your day job. So tell me, how has facing student loans and medical bills, making tough, poor and working class decisions, how has that kind of made you right for the position you hold professionally, both as executive director of campaign for New York Health, or in your past role, working as the VP of legislation for the National Organization for Women in New York?
Yeah, I've always believed that the folks that are best equipped to solve the problems of today are the folks that are closest to them, which is why I think it's so incredibly important to have a diverse legislature, to have a diverse body of individuals in leadership positions and positions of power. And for me, for someone who understands very deeply, right, what it's like to go hungry, what it's like to have to choose between which bill do I pay, that pit in your stomach that everyone is familiar with if you've been in that situation, right, allows you to understand that this system is very much designed to control you and make you feel that way. All of us, right, as a collective. And so once you sort of reach that enlightenment and understand that that system is working against you, and you've really been through it, and you know what it feels like, and you understand that it doesn't have to be that way, that it can be another way. I think it puts folks like me and, others that have gone through what I've gone through in the unique position to fight like hell for all people, right? And so I've never shied away from the tough fights. I think I have a little bit of a reputation for taking the big swings, right? They don't always connect, but I do take the big swings. And I think, in my current role as the executive director for the Campaign for New York Health, we are trying to pass the New York Health Act, which is a single payer healthcare bill, similar to similar to Medicare for all on the federal level, but it would be upgraded comprehensive care for everyone. 92% of New Yorkers would pay less money. And, hospitals would stay open, medical professionals would be paid more. It's a win-win-win across the board. And, to anyone with a heart, anyone with a brain, you hear about this legislation, you think it's a great idea, and you wonder, you scratch your head, why has this not passed? And of course, you and I know the answer to this. It's because of entrenched power and entrenched interests. It's corporate interests, it's corruption, etc. But that does not mean that we don't still fight like hell to move it. I actually think, given these federal cuts, we are in maybe the best position ever to finally move this bill. And I know once New York does it, we'll see it happen like a popcorn effect, and other states will break through as well. So I think it's hard for, children and individuals to have to struggle is not easy. And I think, again, it's not something you and I would wish upon anyone, but it does uniquely position us to take on these big fights and lead these big fights to make big change to improve lives overall.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so interesting because you and I, both fighting for Medicare for all for so long, can look at Democrats and Republicans as part of that entrenched power, not doing the right thing to make that happen, not taking up arms with us, et cetera. But what MAGA's doing, what Trump is doing, what Project 2025 entails, is so much deeper. They're like going directly into the heart and soul of health and science and ripping it to shreds, like everything from vaccinations to, women's health. Like, can you extrapolate on that for me? I mean, I just think, as you pointed out, the bill, anyone reading it looks at that and says, that sounds great. How could that not work? Well, who would look at science and be like, yes, it's best for all of us in this country to destroy that. Let's go back to not knowing things.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there is a very intentional action on the part of Trump, on the part of RFK, to completely maybe break irreparably, even the pieces of our healthcare system that do work. I think it is. It's devastating, if I'm being honest. I think it brings me a lot of anguish, right? Which I do try to channel into the fight, to fight for better. But at the end of the day, it's really all about control, right? If we can make people afraid, where it's easier to control us, right? If we're afraid, it's easier to control us if we have the fear of going bankrupt, if we have the fear of going sick, right? It's easy to control us. And unfortunately, what the Trump administration is doing, with certainly the help of most of the Republican Party, and I'm going to say it, probably some of the Democrats as well, they are trying to dismantle and our system and trying to make it worse. They're rolling any progress we made back, right? And I mean, we've been seeing this, over the last several years when it comes to women's health and abortion care, right? But the news that came out yesterday about gender affirming care, like, what the hell are we doing? We should be moving forward. We should be protecting everybody. We should be providing every individual the care that they need and deserve. And so, we find ourselves at this moment in time where, like, look, let's be real. It is really, really bleak. And I'm not one to sugarcoat, right? I'm one that kind of to shoot straight. It's going to get a lot worse. It's going to get really, really bad. We're going to see tons of people getting kicked off insurance. Communities will get sicker. People will die. Hospitals will close. People will go further and further into debt. And that's the road we're on, right? And 100%, you're right. I do blame that. And that, I lay that at the feet of Trump and his party. But as you said earlier, I think Democrats have had a role to play in this as well. I mean, I don't think they would have taken it to this level, but they have had plenty of opportunities to progress us forward, to cement our rights, to protect all people, and they've chosen not to do it. So I think, we're seeing the brokenness of both political parties. And I think it's why I think folks like us exist, right? Like, we are trying to tell the truth. And like, yeah, look, if we're being honest, we probably do go at the Republican Party, certainly more than we go at the Democratic Party, right? That's honest. But we're also not afraid to go after the Democrats to do the right thing and call them out when they are, modeling their corruption and choosing special interests over the interests of the people. That is something that doesn't always make you popular, right? You do lose a lot of friends. I've lost a lot of friends because I've spoken the truth.
Thank you for doing it.
Well, I appreciate that.
Seriously.
Look,
it is this weird space we're in. The vote blue no matter who, and things of that nature, where you are led to believe that you can't criticize people who are supposedly representing you, people you've put into power. And that's just not true, and it's not helpful. So if they're, constitutionalists, they're not really adhering to that ideology. And if they're trying to see progress and not roll back progress, they're not helping anyone by not holding their elected officials accountable. And so, yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that is one area where, we certainly are willing to face backlash if we have to. I don't care what party you're in. If you're not fighting for the people, you're part of the problem.
100%. And there's a radical honesty there, right? That I think, I mean, like for me, I sleep well because I have an aversion to injustice, right? I have an aversion to this corruption, and I really can't play nice with it, right? It's just not who I am. It's not how I was built. It's not how I was raised. But you know, as I said, it certainly doesn't make you any friends. And I think, you know, sometimes I joke with other folks in the movement that it feels like we're a few years ahead of our time in a way, right? Because folks are really starting to come around, and now they're saying things that I remember I was saying 10 years ago, right? And I think that's progress, right? That's sort of that slow wheel of progress turning. It's infuriating, right? It's infuriating to us because we're like, God damn it, why couldn't you have joined us 10 years ago and pushed for this? But I do think there is something happening. There's a shifting happening of the ground, right? Where these sort of do nothings in both parties, right? There is going to be a reckoning, and I'm not exactly sure what that looks like yet, but I'm encouraged, right? In New York, we just saw in the New York City mayoral election an incredible show of people power, right? That toppled a Democratic dynasty, which of course is the election winning of Zoran Mamdani, the new mayor of New York City, who toppled, you know, serial sexual harasser Andrew Cuomo, right? That's an incredible feat, even though you had Andrew Cuomo as a very, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Andrew Cuomo was a very flawed candidate, right? Yeah. But he had all the billionaire class with him. He had all the special interests. He had decades of connections, right? His father was governor. He was governor, right? And a lot of establishment Democrats lined up to support him. A lot of women, really horrible to actually see that in my own state. And we know from reading studies, right? It is often not the will of the people that moves bills. It is the special interests. And we hate that, but that is the reality that we're dealing with, which is why I was so thrilled and so happy to see that people power really did topple it. And I think it gave us hope, not just in New York, but really maybe around the country, maybe even around the world, that we actually can do these hard things, right? If we bring people together. And I think this political moment is ripe for that. And I do expect we'll see more of that.
Well, that's great. I'm really glad you went into the Mamdani victory, because I was going to ask you about that anyway. I think you are absolutely right. It hasn't just hit New York. It's hit the country and the world. And I mean, listen, everybody's flawed. Mamdani, not, you know, I mean, the people he picked for his committees, I couldn't be happier. But did he do the right thing with the police commissioner? No. So, like, you know, no one's going to be perfect. But what this did demonstrate, as you pointed out, is people power. And that is, you know, for people who have this aversion to injustice, like you and I do, it's an incredible feeling. It's the opposite. It's empowering. And as you said, as things are going to get worse, in other ways, things are going to get better. And so I know this felt like it was a 2-second conversation, but I do try to keep them short. So let's close out with, you know, keeping on that mindset of people power, but focusing more on citizen journalism and social media and other ways where, you know, maybe people who can't get outside and do a direct action, or, you know, don't have the money to give tons to a mutual aid group. You know, most people have a way of getting news from one place to another, whether it's shooting it on the street because they're there, or posting it to social media, or sending it to their friends, whatever it might be. We, the people, have power outside of voting and outside of protesting, and inclusive of mutual aid. But we are the new journalists of the world, as I see it. So tell me how you've turned into this public figure outside of the direct work you do, where you're influencing people every day just with your social media platforms and the curating of information that you provide.
Yeah. Well, it's it's interesting when I think back to where I started. I remember, starting a new Twitter account when I was first running for office, and we had no followers, right? And so it's really interesting to see how it's grown. And I think, I guess I had the added benefit of running for office, right, where more people are maybe looking at your messaging, more people might be following you. But I didn't run necessarily in like a high profile market. Our race did not get a lot of coverage, right? But I think it's just been really about consistency of telling the truth, of trying to, I've always prided myself on trying to break down complex policy and make it easy to understand for the masses. I think, a lot of bills, a lot of legislation, they're written in legalese, right? And most individuals cannot read it and make sense of it. So trying to really break that down to make politics more accessible and make it accessible to everyone, I think is really critical to the work that I do. Of course, it helps a little bit if you sometimes throw a little humor in there, right? To try to, hit a certain chord, which we found some success with here. But I think, look, at the end of the day, I think it's about using whatever platform you have and using it consistently. And it's that consistency that really helps you build and helps you get your word out, right? And it doesn't matter if you're running for Congress or, you work at a bakery or whatever you do, right? It's about that consistency. And I think we should all remember that even within our own networks, we're influential, right? We are all influential to the people that we know. So reaching out to them, letting them know about a policy, letting them know about a vote, making politics accessible in our own networks, in our own lives, to our friends, to our family, coworkers, etc. All of that is important because right now the stakes have, and I hate that I'm going to say this, but it is true, the stakes have never been higher, right? They just haven't. And a lot of people are poised to be in too much harm's way, right? And so it's incumbent upon each and every one of us to use our platforms, whether it be, your tweet going viral, or it be you in a room having a conversation with some friends, right? Those are your platforms that are accessible. And if we all did that and we all used our platforms more collectively, I think we'd be in a lot better of a place than we are right now.
Beautifully said. Thank you. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for all of your work. Before we go, is there anything else you want to add that, maybe I didn't ask you about that is, right at the top of your mind right at this moment?
I think that we need to ground ourselves in the reality of now. I think and I am encouraged, right, that there are many people that want to step up and want to do something. And we're seeing them again at the protests, but, even running the campaign for New York Health, the amount of individuals reaching out to not just be against Trump, but to actually find a solution has been really, really encouraging. So I guess I would just say that as hard as it is, right, to keep our eyes open in this moment, we must do that. We can't bury our heads because there really just is too much at stake, and we can't allow our communities to be harmed further by this very reckless administration, and to know that there are solutions, right? We don't have to take what the federal government is giving us lying down. Your state governments and sometimes your county governments, they're the best tools in your toolbox to fight back. And if we have states that step up and pass universal health care and combat these horrible policy choices on a federal level, that's going to show strength, and kind of similar to Zoran's win, right? That sort of fighting back, that slap back, will motivate other states to do the same. And I know we won't save everyone, but we'll save a lot more that way. So please don't give up. Please don't despair. Please keep your eyes open, and please always seek the solutions.
Fire. I'm glad I asked. Everyone who's been listening, if you've enjoyed this edition of Global Warning, be sure to like, comment, and share. Check out the first 8 episodes, subscribe, and for exclusive extras, become an official member. Episode 9 with the incredible Melanie Dorigo has been sponsored by Zevo Life Superfood, Good Feels Cannabis Seltzer, and Shimmerwood CBD-infused seltzers. Only the good stuff, right, Melanie? Exclusive discounts using code WARNING. Link in video description. See you next week or the week after because it's Christmas for episode 10.
War is immoral. Poverty is immoral. Racism is immoral. Police brutality is immoral. Oppression is immoral. Genocide is immoral. Imperialism is immoral. This country represents all those things. All those things. All those things.